Hi, this is Ronnie coming at you with a video. I thought I'd throw in my tuppence on this conversation, um, having just seen Jenny the Rogue DM's video on uh, Game Master's first system. So this is in part sort of my answer to that question and partly a sort of comment on Jenny's video. I agree with her completely, and I think it just makes sense. That systems that you might find simple as a player aren't necessarily good systems to start with as a GM. My personal opinion is that the first system for a GM should be one where the mechanics are very simple, where the bookkeeping is done with bare minimum. GMs have a lot to juggle without having to worry about masses of rules. So with that in mind, here are my suggestions for a good first system. Now, this is not to denigrate any other system out there. These are just mine, based on my own experiences as a player and, more importantly, as a GM. So the first one I'm going to mention is Dragon Age. Dragon Age, now that all three sets are out and that there is going to be an all-in-one rulebook coming out this year, is a very good beginner's system. The mechanics are incredibly simple. And if you are someone unlike me who has actually played the video games, because I haven't, it would be an easy world to get into. I'm slightly playing catch up because I haven't played the video games. But the system is very good. From what I've seen from Green Ronin's press release, they intend to release a sort of generic fantasy RPG using what they call the Adventure Game Engine, which is the rule set that runs Dragon Age. And that could be very interesting to see. Next one I'm going to mention is Dragon Warriors, which is a very old game. You can get it on DriveThruRPG if you don't mind the expense of buying it and then printing it. It came out when the old BECMI D&D system was out in the 80s, and then Mongoose Publishing got a hold of it for a reprint under their Magnum Opus label. It's a very good system, very simple, very straightforward, and I would recommend it highly for something a little different. The other one I'm going to mention is in the D categories is Dark Dungeons. Dark Dungeons is an unofficial reprint of the D&D Rule Cyclopedia. And whilst as a system it is very restricted in so much as Dwarf is seen as a character class rather than a race in its own right, as a beginner's system for a GM, it's damn near flawless. Obviously, some of the creatures and terminology have been tweaked slightly from the Rule Cyclopedia so as not to alert Wizards of the Coast lawyers, and it has been made under the OGL. You can also buy, I believe you can also buy, I think it's $10, you can buy the old Rule Cyclopedia off a drive-thru. And again, if you don't mind the printing, because it's a fairly big book, it's well worth a punt as well. Although I haven't ran a game of it, I am currently playing in Jenny's Advanced Fighting Fantasy campaign, and I would agree with her that AFF is a good beginner system. It's a very simple system, and that one is worth a punt as well. I would also say the D6 system. If you can get the old Star Wars D6, great. If not, there's D6 Fantasy, D6 Space, D6 Adventure. They're all available as PDF downloads, and they're free on Drive for RPG. And they're worth a punt as well, again, if you don't mind the printout. Or if you're happy using it on a tablet or handheld device. Very simple system, very easy to use, and would make a good first system. With regards to generic systems, I'm going to recommend two. I'm going to recommend Savage Worlds. I think Savage Worlds is a very simple system. I own Savage Worlds. I've got the Deluxe Explorers Edition. And I don't think I'm odd in so much as, but I'm slightly different in so much as I haven't went for any of the campaign settings bar one. I bought Marchlands purely to have a sort of urban fantasy setting that I could use almost generically. And there's one which I can get print on demand on Drive for RPG called Gaslight, which is a Savage Worlds steampunk, which, given my abiding love of steampunk, I'm very intrigued to see. But mostly I have the companion sets. I have the fantasy companion, I have the horror companion, the sci-fi companion, and the superpowers companion. And they are superb. The system is very simple. Bennies might take a little getting used to, but you know, it's not overly complicated, and there's not a lot of bookkeeping at all required by the GM. The mechanics are very simple, and it's just a very straightforward little rule set, and I would recommend it highly. The other one I'm going to recommend is True 20. True 20 is just Jenny is right when I've said that it's essentially a streamlined D20, which it is. I mean, they've cut all the fat out, and to the fact where you only use a single 20-sided die for everything. No other die is ever used. And you're always looking to roll high. So the GM really doesn't have to worry too much. He can just do and be and just get on with creating, because the rule set is very good. If I would recommend, if you're going to get hold of True 20, I mean, it's very difficult now because it's out of print, but if you're going to get it, get the revised edition. Not only because it's got errata built into the system, it also has some wonderful pieces at the back. The original version had specific campaign settings, and they're nice. But the revised edition took the True 20 companion route, which was to have specific sections for running fantasy, a specific section for running sci-fi, a specific section for running horror, and a specific section for running sort of modern action. The only complaint I hold against True 20 is I wouldn't have had the modern action section. I would have had something else. I would have had something like supers or steampunk. You know, just something other than sort of, you know, let's do G.I. Joe. You know, or here's everything you do. Here's everything you need to run Rambo. I would much rather have had something outside the box, a little more fantastical. But that's a niggle, because you can easily get sort of Victorian age for True 20, which pretty much is steampunk. There's an awful lot of steampunk for that. You get a lot of bang for your buck. And certainly the system provided the bedrock that then got moved again and ended up becoming Mutants and Masterminds. So anyone who's played Mutants and Masterminds will feel kind of at home with True 20. So those are my suggestions. I would say, especially the new GMs, watch as many of these kinds of videos as possible with people's recommendations, because you'll no doubt get a lot. Do some research on them. Wikipedia, it gets some things right, you know. Wikipedia usually has a nice list of games, the basics of the mechanics and so on. Also try and see if there are play videos with people actually playing the game, so you might get a feel for the mechanics by watching a game being played. Those would be my suggestions. But more importantly, just get out there, find a simple system. Eventually, you can gravitate up to more involved systems. I mean, I've got systems that are great. I love them, but I wouldn't recommend them to beginner players. Things like Pendragon is not a good one for a starting GM. Song of Ice and Fire is definitely not for a starting GM, and so on and so forth, because they're very mechanic intensive and a lot of bookkeeping involved. But the ones I've mentioned, I would definitely recommend, and have a ball, have fun, good gaming, and I'll be back soon with another video.